Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sembra's Growth Series. This is episode 3. For those of you who are new to Sembra or are not aware of what we do, we are a community organization and we're focused on building equity so that all people can grow where they are planted. And we do that through education-based sessions like these. We do that through networking and connection, as well as community involvement. And we launched Sembra's Growth Series for a few reasons. One, so that we can all have accessibility and visibility to amazing leaders such as Dio, who we have on our call here today. Also give people an opportunity to learn about social topics or things happening in our communities that deserve light and attention. And also just create a dialogue in a safe space, and for us to also, invest in our own professional development, as leaders, diverse leaders, people of color. We are very intentional at Sembra in creating spaces that promote that all in one place and in a place that's authentic and, again, accessible to all of you. So this is more of a, I would say, podcast meets webinar style. And instead of having the podcast recorded and then sharing it, we like to do it live to invite people in our community to be part of the conversation. And as I mentioned, this will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. So feel free to share it with colleagues. If you find today's conversation fruitful, our conversations are open for everyone. And so with that, I will go ahead and introduce Dio. Dio's pronouns are he, him, and my pronouns are she, her, Jasmine Zamora. I didn't mention that earlier, but Jasmine, founder of Sembra. Dio is an Afro-Caribbean individual. He was born in Limón, Costa Rica. He is a Blatinx Trans male growing up in a Baptist household. And we will talk a little bit about his background and his childhood and how he grew up a little bit later today. Dio is the CEO and co-founder of Chosen Collective Consulting, Reset Retreats, and Centers Care and Community Building for BIPOC communities and also queer and LGBTQIA plus communities. Chosen Collective is half a DEI consulting firm and half a wellness retreat curation, which, if we just pause there and think about that, it's so incredible that Dio is creating this space to combine both, because there is so much intersection with DEI and wellness and mental health. Dio welcomes the opportunity to engage in difficult, transformative conversations and necessary dialogue that initiates change and action. Dio earned his Bachelor of Arts in Black Studies from UC Santa Barbara and a dual master's in social work and social justice with a specialization in leadership and development in social services from Loyola University, Chicago. Dio also believes in a good nap, and I love that you have that in your bio, which I paraphrased, but I think we can all agree these days that more naps are necessary and good for our mental health. So with that, Dio, is there anything else you want to share about yourself? And then kick us off into a little icebreaker. It's Monday. I think we can all use a little bit extra energy. And so I'll let you have the floor.
For sure. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for your welcome and your support over the years. It's such an honor to be here and be in conversation with you all. Thank you for making it on a Monday morning. Monday mornings are hard in general, so I appreciate everyone for being here, for real. Yeah, I know you said it. We can get into it, but in terms of, I know for our check-in question for the morning, I would love to know, what were some of the songs that brought you joy in high school? So some of the things that I like to do, particularly when I'm a little stressed out or when things are a little stressful, is I like to reminisce about some of the things that brought me joy back in the day, or even the things that brought me joy just a week ago, right? So yeah, if anyone in the chat, if you'd like to share what songs brought you joy in high school, so take it way back. For me, so definitely was like I love music. Music is one of my first loves. I grew up being a drummer. And so the songs that came to mind were Redemption Song by Bob Marley when I was in my deep moments, like just really thinking about the lyrics to that song and what they really mean. And of course, the melody is beautiful. And then Let Me Love You by Mario, because I used to also pretend I was an R&B singer in my room by myself. And that was one of the songs that I would fake perform. But it was such a good song. Come on, Mario. But yeah, so those are the songs that I'm thinking of that brought me joy in high school.
Mario is amazing. I actually had to research this because when you mentioned this question, I said, "What were my songs back then?" And then I went to a full rabbit hole of Sasha Fierce, Beyonce's album. That album got me through everything during high school, and my best friend at the time, we reminisce on every single song. And, you know, every time I hear her songs, it still brings me back to that time and the person that I was back then, and really just channeling everything that she had during that album.
Yeah.
If I Were a Boy, Halo, there were so many bangers in that album.
Come on, let the people know it's such a bomb album. I need to listen to that all the way through. We got Samantha, We Belong Together. Come on, everybody singing off key to Mariah Carey is definitely a memory.
That's hitting that high note, right? That's exactly what that is. We couldn't
Yep.
get it, but you know what? But we knew that we in our minds we could. So that's a good one for me.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for sharing. I feel like that's such a great release, hitting songs off key. I love that high note. Thank you so much for sharing. Ashley mentioned listening now as a 36-year-old. I should not have been singing some of them. Absolute yin yang twins, like all them things should not have been a part of the repertoire. Anything My Chemical Romance, absolutely. Black Parade was my song. That song is so great and epic. Alicia Keys, No One, Girl on Fire. Early 2000s music was a gift. Hip hop, emo stuff. Avril Lavigne, let's go. Absolutely. Come on, Avril. Itzel, I Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas reminds me of Quince practices.
Yes.
Amazing.
I love that. I feel like we need a playlist after this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do it. Let's do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. I know music's a big part of your life, and you do that in your consulting sessions too. I've, you know, brought you on board at former companies for, you know, DEI sessions, and I know music's always a big part, and it just brings everyone joy for the music that connects with them. So I love that. So let's go ahead. I'm curious just to start with a very broad question. And so it's at the liberty for you to share whatever you feel comfortable with sharing with us. But, you know, I mentioned it a little bit in your bio, and you recently posted a LinkedIn an update and sharing a little bit about your childhood and growing up again in a Baptist home, and you know that you found a lot of healing through music, and that you had to find moments to really channel your inner being as you know you started to figure out who you were and what that means for you. So can you just take us back a little bit as we're talking about throwbacks, what your childhood was like, and did you always feel a difference like in your mind, body, soul in terms of just what you experienced?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Yeah, I was like, "Ooh, how do I answer this one?" Because yeah, like I think first and foremost, I think it's important for me to name like, I think I grew up middle class, and I think class privilege definitely allows for certain things, right? Right, in terms of even I was a tomboy, so I had to wear my dresses on Sunday, but it also meant that I could also wear some shorts, or have my family have the capacity for me to wear shorts and some Nikes from Ross. Shout out to Ross. You know what I mean? In order to also kind of engage that aspect of myself that I was yearning for, so I think that's important to name. Afro-Latinx, background, right? I was born in Limón, Costa Rica, and raised in Southern California. And I'm Black. So I also feel like I was always kind of in between, like Southern California is notorious for there being kind of a lot of conflict between like Black and Latinx people, right? But I felt like I was kind of like in between because of who I was. So I literally hung out with everybody. So that was like also an interesting intersection. But yeah, I grew up, and my parents were very loving and community-centered people. My mom's a social worker. My dad worked in the car industry. And we were really active in church, which really allowed for me to have a really I would say like a very multi-generational experience as well, right? Because our church had younger people and older people, right? So it really allowed me that space of like, yeah, how do I interact with people regardless of where they come from and connect with them, and also play music for them, which was my way of showing love. And then there was this, this world of, my family being solid, beautiful, my church family being beautiful. And also me coming to terms with, realizing that there was like a rub between who I was inside, right? In terms of thinking about like my attraction and even how I performed my gender. I was like, man, like, there's definitely this need for me to be a girl and to be attracted to men, but like, I'm not feeling that in my spirit at all. Right. And that was definitely a hardship for me, right? In terms of, even I think my post mentions like as a kid I used to like read the book of Revelations at night because I was trying to like literally scare myself into being straight, right, or being more feminine, right, or even promising myself that I wouldn't be in relationships ever, right, but that I would instead just kind of literally have a cat, continue to be doing good at school, live alone, right, and just not live out that aspect of my identity. So I feel like I was outwardly, happy and social, right, as a pastor's kid and, loving my community, but then also inwardly, like definitely living in like a almost purgatory or inward, inward hardship. And then, but then I would find these little things that helped really protect me from myself or protect me into like caring for aspects of myself. So for example, I played the drums at church. At first, my family wanted me to play the piano, which I regret not playing piano, but like that was kind of my way of rebelling and doing something that at the time I deemed like masculine, right? Or like at church, if I was on the choir, I would sing like the tenor parts instead of like the alto or soprano, right? And just try to sing those parts, right? So I found myself playing basketball, right? So doing these little things that like helped support me in who I was, but still kind of having that internal rub or fear.
Yeah, I thought about that as when you were speaking as, what was that outlet where you felt like you were able to be, creative? And it sounds like you had family support, which, is really critical when you think about you're already, in adolescence going through so many emotions and changes, just being a young, person. And then you add these additional layers of self-discovery. And so what were some of those key moments that where you found starting to really fulfill yourself in terms of whether it was people around you or spaces that you felt safe in? But what did some of that look like for you?
Honestly, sometimes just in my room at night. It's like before I would read, the nights that I wasn't reading the book of Revelations, it'd be things like listening to music or writing or just kind of even creating like a different world in my head. Like think about like that Cinderella song, my own little corner, my own little chair. Like literally, that's how I felt, like that song, right, in so many ways. And I think just like in little moments when I don't think my family was, I think there's this moment where like when you're a kid, it's really cute to be like a tomboy, you know what I mean? Right? Until it's like you hit like 17 and it's like, come on, like where's the dresses at? You know what I mean? So I think there was that shift,
Yeah.
right? Of like my family was supportive of like, oh yeah, like, you can wear some of these things, but at the same time, like I think when it came to like actually thinking about sexuality and gender in a more personal way, right? I think there was like definitely a rub or tension there. And so I found that, and honestly, when I went into college, and I also remember making a conscious choice to not tell anyone that I was attracted to women until like I was like, let me go to college and be a little gay. Like, that was like a conscious decision I made because I was also fearful of like, of going into a program like that would do conversion therapy or something like that. That was like always in the back of my mind. So it was in college, and honestly, it was friends that kind of were like, even when I didn't have the courage to even say the words or really come into myself or come out, my friends were like, come on, fam, like you're wearing cargo shorts and some Dickies, and like we have to have a conversation. I think you're part of the community. So I really definitely give a lot of love to like the chosen family and community that I met in college in terms of like accepting me even when I couldn't really accept myself. So college was a big time for me.
I love that. I love that you found community early on in terms of, changing and I guess continuing your education that ultimately led you to where you are today. But I wanted to go back to, you talked a little bit about gender identity and expression. There's so many ways that we define that, right? Even whether you're a little familiar or very familiar, it's constantly changing every single day. Just to kind of take it back to basics a little bit, how do you define gender identity and gender expression, like in terms of how you live into that and define it,
Yes.
for us?
So gender identity is kind of honestly like a combination of your heart and your mind, right? It's your internal sense of who you are, right? Do you see yourself as more feminine, more masculine? Do you see yourself as a man, woman, or neither of them? Do you see yourself as non-binary and you're above this gender stuff, right? So again, it's really that internal sense, right, of who you are. And our gender identity can be, again, some of the identities I just mentioned now, right? And I also want to give a major love to Indigenous communities in particular, who have long understood that there's more than two aspects of gender, right? There's some communities that use the language of two-spirit, right, to name this multiplicity, and that honestly none of us are ever really one thing, right, regardless of how we identify, right? And then gendered expression is being, I like to say, just like your swag, right? It's what you wear, right? It's how you want to present yourself to the world, right? And it's often your external representation of your internal self, right? And again, either of those can shift, right? It can also shift depending on your context, right? If you're in a space that doesn't feel that may not be open to your gender expression in particular ways, and maybe you're not fully allowed, you don't feel safe enough to fully explore or share, or wear your gender expression in the ways that you would like, right? So that's how I define them. And I think relatedly, two terms, right? Gender dysphoria and gender euphoria, right? Gender dysphoria is that feeling of not being in alignment with your gender, your internal sense of gender. So, right. So maybe you experience distress, right? Because you're not able to fully embrace your gender identity internally, or also because your external world, it doesn't seem supportive and understanding of your gender. And then gender euphoria is that feeling of feeling proud, right? And alignment and kind of like a oneness and connection with your gender, and with your gender identity and your gender expression often. And something I like to name is that these ideas aren't just for trans and gender nonconforming people. Like, we all experience gender euphoria. If you get your nails done and your hair done and you're feeling good, like, that's an example of gender euphoria, right? And that's not just something that's specific to the trans experience, right? However, of course, because of how we may identify, right, particularly trans and gender nonconforming and non-binary people, we can experience that less and less because of our surroundings, right? So it's important that we cultivate a world where everyone kind of feels that, because we all do in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I always think about you when you say gender euphoria, because isn't that the goal, right? For everyone to feel empowered and comfortable in their skin, show up the way that they want. And unfortunately, I feel there still are a lot of spaces where, you don't feel comfortable fully doing that, or, the way you show up is going to cause rumblings, or people are going to talk about you, especially in the Latino community. I know that you have an intersection of Black and Latino as you grew up, but how was that? Was there like this kind of expectation for you to, I know you said you grew up, as a tomboy. I think even I had my tomboy moments, but to your point, it was always a dress on Easter Sunday and, all of that. So, how did you navigate that? And people are still navigating it today. Like, if I show up to cargos in a t-shirt, my mom says, "Oh, like, you didn't dress up today." And I'm like, "Well, no, I didn't feel like it." And even though it's a very different experience than maybe other people, right? It's still my experience. And to your point, we can all experience that.
Mhm.
And we should be at least practice more openness in terms of letting people show up the way that they want, right? In the way that they feel comfortable. So how did you navigate, I guess, some of those expectations? And do you still find that today that you're still having to navigate?
Yeah, no, it was definitely hard. Like, I feel like Sundays in particular were like beautiful in terms of like, being able to connect with, beautiful people, being able to play the drums, right? Being able to perform music, right? And then like at the same time, it was like, oh man, I'm wearing, tights and socks and like a dress, or I was on my Hillary Clinton, that was like my way of trying to do something different and wear like a two-piece, skirt suit situation. Right. But like, it was hard. And I feel like the way that I did it was honestly like my saving grace of music, of after church. Sometimes I would like, church would be over and I would slip into my clothes that I wanted to wear right after church, it was doing things like that that was really helpful. And I think like the hard part, right, because so much of that conversation around what are you wearing and all this stuff really comes down to like family not wanting other people to have a conversation to be talked about, right? It's like goes into the Cheeseman thing. You don't want so-and-so to see you dressed a certain way, you know what I mean? And so that was hard. When I went to Costa Rica, that was also a big thing for me too, particularly on Sundays or other days, when it'd be like, oh, we have this dinner or this thing, and it was like, okay, you should dress, a certain way. So it was hard. It wasn't until I would say like after I turned 18, a little bit like where I was like maybe in college and was able to go away and kind of like have these long periods of time where I was like able to, express my gender in a particular way that I really found confidence in doing that. And so it would be like, okay, if I'm doing this at school, like if I come home, I'm going to try to keep that same energy, and yeah, so it was hard. And I think now it's interesting because like, I feel like now I do have, so privilege in that like, now in my journey, my gender journey, I'm considered like passing, right? And I also think because I am a trans man, there is some like, there is some like, trans men and trans men of color are still, killed and violated and all these different things. So I don't want to also not say that doesn't happen, right? But I do think there is a particular layer of privilege in terms of even my family perceiving me a certain way. Like, I'm married to a woman, ultimately that's, a straight marriage, right? Even though I do identify as queer. So I even think that there's some layers of that where it's like, oh yeah, even now this shirt, my grandma would be proud of this shirt, right? But if I was maybe my expression was a little different, right? If my brother Mario came out as Maria, like I think it'd be a different experience, he's 6'3", you know what I mean? And so there's just differences I think there too that I'm navigating now, where it's like now I'm grateful because it aligns with what I want, but it also lands me into another layer of privilege in an interesting way, where my grandma buys me shirts and my mom buys me shirts, and like it's a beautiful thing.
I love that. And we'll get into grandma and family, I think, in here a couple minutes. But no, thanks for sharing that. And I think you're such a wonderful representation for the community and for people to really, be in their own skin and their own purpose and whatever that looks like. And the fact that you say you have privilege because of the way that you've navigated this gender journey for yourself, I mean, that takes so much awareness to be able to say that. And, I applaud you for being so authentic. Now, with that, because, ever since I met you, I've always just been attracted to you in terms of your personality and just like the way that you show up and the way that you love and care for people. But also because of your confidence, like you exude so much confidence just in the way that you talk and the way that you educate as well. Like you educate with so much grace. And I think it's important too in the type of work that we do that we understand that not everyone comes from the same level of compassion and understanding. And so it's really in our nature to be able to really listen and adapt to our environments. And I just have always felt you've done that so, so well. And so my question to you is, you know, how did you become confident, or like what, like just tell us your secret in terms of how you show up confidently, and what did you do or what steps did you take? What were some of those moments for you that have contributed to your confidence now?
Well, first of all, it's drag. This is confidence drag. It's just, no, so first of all, I definitely struggle with like, with let's see, with self-doubt, with like, oh, can I actually do this? Like, is it possible? Right. That definitely, is a thing. I think in terms of how I've continued to be on that growth building of confidence, it's definitely been, let's see, what has it been? I think when I have a low moment in particular, like I try to think through everything that I've overcome, right? Like maybe not everything, but I kind of think like, oh wow, you made it through that. Like you can definitely make it through this, right? And I feel like having that mindset has definitely been helpful in my journey. Like I remember, like this is going to be super ridiculous, but I remember I'm not a huge fan of roller coasters at all. Like that's not my ministry. But we did go to Disney World and we were on, I forgot, was it the Tron ride, which is fast. Like, so I remember being on there, like scared as hell, and being like, no, if I could come out to my pastor daddy, like Baptist, I could do this damn ride. Like, I remember that literally going through my mind, right? Because I was definitely scared. Like, even though it's Disney World, like I was definitely scared out of my mind. So that's definitely something that helps. I think like I'm also a huge, like, I'm a product of my village. Like, you know, I'm loved. Like I major shout out to my parents, to my siblings, to my grandmother, right? Knowing that they pray for me and they like have best intentions for me, like is helpful in that confidence building. I have friends and chosen family who pour into me, my beautiful wife who pours into me, right? So it's just like, I think that's a big part of it. My spiritual practice is really important to me, you know, making sure I pray, you know, shout out to the ancestors. I'm like, okay, like if y'all got a mission for me to do out here, like I'm gonna go for it. Like, so that's a huge part of who I am. You know, the church boy never really left. Like I'm still here, you know, in a lot of ways. And so that's really important for me. Music, like what you listen to when you're in the shower, like is it a Cardi B day? Is it a gospel day? Like what I got to do to get to where I need to be, you know what I mean? Right. So I think that's, you know, but it's daily, you know, sometimes I feel really confident. Sometimes I don't. It just, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's being a human, right? We're not 100% every single day. And all of the things that you noted is part of what makes us who we are and brings us confidence, brings us purpose, brings us, you know, calm energy, good vibes. I think it sounds like you have a holistic kind of circle around you that supports you. And it's actually a good segue into kind of what I wanted to talk about next, which is your business, your company, Chosen Collective. And you've already used the word a couple of times. So I want to hear kind of the inspiration behind the name and yeah, a little bit of like what you do there. But I think more importantly, like the why behind the name, right? Because I think that's so important. And it really is, I think, a depiction of you. And so I'd really love for you to share that.
For sure. No, thank you so much. Yeah, so Chosen, the name, so I grew up, as we've been talking about in church, right? So there is this connotation around like the chosen ones, right? Like being God's chosen people, or particularly having a purpose or a mission in this world to carry out, right? So I think it definitely derives from there. And then thinking about myself, like what am I chosen to do in this world? And also there's other people, particularly I think, that occupy the intersections of being people of color and LGBTQI plus folks, right? If you occupy those intersections, one or both or all the above, right? Like there are certain things that you have to, that you unfortunately are predetermined to go through in life that make life more difficult, right? If you're navigating racism, if you're navigating transphobia or gender discrimination, right? So thinking about us like having a almost dual, sometimes triple purpose in this world to care for each other and to care for each other and also to care for the world. And so it came out of me really thinking about like, yeah, that process or that those concepts. And then really wanting to bring together people who are doing community-centered work regardless of their industry, right? So even on our team, you know, we have folks who are DEI consultants, we have folks who are licensed clinical social workers who do therapy, right? Do EMDR, right? My friend Ali, right? We also have folks who are a DJ, we have folks who are illustrators, right? And so thinking about like, again, like, you know, each of those people have beautiful special skills and talents. They're chosen to do what they do, and we're also here to make an impact in the world, right? And so that's where the name came from. And in terms of like the concept of being half DEI and half, you know, wellness and retreat, I did diversity, equity, and inclusion work for over 10 years. I worked within higher education specifically before I started Chosen Collective. And so like there was always this rub between, you know, needing to, of course, educate and bridge understanding, right? And kind of like, you know, basically, for lack of a better term, like teach people about intersectional experiences regarding race, right? Gender identity, LGBTQ, you know, immigration status, etc. Right? That was accessibility. So it's really important to hold those spaces. And how do we also hold spaces for the people who are impacted by those isms, right? Right. So it's also like, okay, let's teach about racism, and let's also create space for the people who are impacted by said racism, right? So that's how I think this ultimately came to be, is out of that work. And so, you know, I do DEI work, and then my retreats are really like just like they're a manifestation of things that I didn't think at all would be in my life. Like, I'm like, what? I get to do this? Right. So I grew up predominantly in the US, but in Southern California specifically. But most summers, my parents would send us to Costa Rica. It was actually cheaper to spend time with your grandparents in Costa Rica over the summers than it was to like literally be in like daycare or summer camp.
Imagine that.
Yeah, for real. I know, right? Such a blessing. So
Yeah.
so I got to, you know, so I spent a lot of time with them and got to know my hometown, right? Got to build community with my grandparents' friends, right? So again, another intergenerational, play cards, play Conquian, which I'm learning a lot of other Latin American countries play that card game as well.
Wait, what is it called?
Conquian. It's a card game.
Con quién?
Yeah. You
Yeah.
say Conquian?
Is it
Okay.
con quién?
Maybe we say Conquian, but I think that might be also because of the Jamaican
I don't know what that is, but now I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Okay, so we gotta do another card lesson. Intersectionality, me knows how to play that, but I can't play spades. I'm sorry, still need to learn.
I don't know how to play spades either. No.
Yeah, no, but like, so one of the first retreats I ever went on, and I realized, was with my grandparents and their friends, for 2 nights. So they would do like, they have this, you know, this group called Ladies Unity and Men's Unity. And so they would do trips with each other. And I remember being 12, joining this trip, definitely the youngest person. Everybody else was at least 60 plus, right? And I'm on this trip and I'm just like soaking it in and hearing all the stories. And then, you know, cut to, you know, I guess 10, 15, no, maybe like 15 years later, here I am hosting retreats, taking folks back to my hometown, meeting my family, right? Folks who are BIPOC, folks who are LGBTQ, right? A lot of folks who are social workers, therapists. We even got some accountants in the mix, right? Because ultimately it's also important, if you hold, regardless of where you work, right? If you hold these identities and these experiences, you're either caretaking at work or you're caretaking at home, right? Whether it be with your biological family. So it's really been an honor to hold space and to think about, you know, folks, you know, maybe for trans folks who maybe not feel super comfortable in their bodies, but are coming into them, you know, being able to swim, right? To be surrounded by other people who are supportive and loving and caring, right? To have conversations around healthcare, right? While we're on the beach in a non-stressful environment, right? While we're eating really, really good food that's fresh, you know what I mean? Also intentionally pouring into local businesses, predominantly ones who are Black, Indigenous, and women-owned businesses, and LGBTQ-owned businesses as well, right? So it's definitely this like circle of these really cool experiences. And everybody gets a hug from grandma, you know, if we're on time. So that's also special too, right? That my family gets to see me be okay too, because I feel like, you know, yes, of course, you know, queer phobia, transphobia, and all these things exist, right? And can be perpetuated by church and religious spaces. And I also think that there's also this internal fear for parents around like, oh my gosh, will my kid be okay? You know, like that's kind of also a thing. So I think for them to also witness me be okay, find people, be in community, I think is also powerful. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And congratulations to you. The fact that you're able to bring people back to your roots, to your home, and give them this experience in such, again, a holistic, safe, and caring way. I mean, I want to go to one of these retreats. I'm so sad I can't go to the one this year, but just the way that you've curated your people, right? You talk about your, you know, your chosen family, the people that you work with, like, you know, having a mental health person on staff, having a DJ on staff, like having yourself to curate these, you know, opportunities, and really in a unique way, because I haven't, you hear about retreats, whether it's a company retreat or a wellness retreat, but the connectedness that you're building is unlike I've ever seen, to be able to go to such a unique place and, take it back to our Latino roots. I think that's so powerful. But thank you for sharing that. And we'll be sure to share kind of where people can find, or maybe you tell us, where can people find info on not just your DI work, but also, the retreats and all of that.
Sure. Chosencollective.org. Let me get my little tree link.
Yeah.
But yeah, so chosencollective.org is where everything is. You can also find me on Instagram. So it's Chosen Collective. And then my personal is DIOALD. But let me go ahead and put this in the chat. Where my mouse at? All right, here we go.
Nice. While you're doing that, I mentioned just you sharing, your link tree, because we're already at 11:38 and we are done at 11:45. So I also just wanted to say, I can't believe I didn't mention this at the top of the call, but happy Juneteenth and happy Pride.
Absolutely. It's both. Yep.
It's both. And, I think you do, again, a wonderful job of intersecting both. And so is there any just education point or tidbit that you want to share for people out there that are celebrating both, or just want to celebrate both, but maybe don't know how? Maybe there's a little piece of wisdom or action that you can share that people could do, whether it's for Pride or for Juneteenth this week. And let me stop there, because Juneteenth and Pride, yes, they're there in June, but we're doing actions around both of those days year round, right? So, but just for the sake of the time that we're in, if you wanted to share.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, so part of my work too is I have a workshop that specifically talks through Juneteenth and Pride and honoring both celebrations and the intersections between them. So yeah, we're true to this, when we're saying it's both. And I think in terms of what to do, right? What to do within the next few days or all year long, as Jasmine said, right? Learn about the history of the days, right? Learn about how Juneteenth came to be a national holiday, right? I'm giving honor to, Mrs. Opal Lee, for example, right, as an activist and person who really shepherded this being a federal holiday. Thinking about Pride, right, the Stonewall riots, right, thinking about particularly, did I disappear? Did my camera go off?
Yeah, it looks like you were frozen a little bit, but we could still hear you talking. Okay. Oh, there, you're coming back. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So thinking about reading about the history, right? Also being mindful of where your money is going, right? Are you patronizing or going to Black-owned restaurants and businesses all year long? Are you going to LGBTQ-owned businesses? If you're someone that likes massages, for example, right? Going to, even if you don't identify as LGBTQ particularly, going to one that knows has a mission that supports LGBTQ people, right? Right? Because that's really important. So learning about the day, being part of the celebrations in your town, right? Because a lot of towns now are also hosting parades and celebrations and activations around them. So, and if you can't go, donate to them, right? And if you want to go and help, go see if you can help and be on staff and clean up. I've gone to a Juneteenth celebration and cleaned up, you know what I mean? And done that, right? So there's definitely different ways. I would say set aside time monthly to learn about Black history, right? To learn about LGBTQ history, to learn about other LGBTQ rebellions that aren't just Stonewall Riot, right? Because while Stonewall Riot is extremely important, right, there was moments that came prior that served as acts of resistance, right, that led to that riot taking place. So yeah, become a little bit of a history nerd and be mindful of where your money goes, and then support those in your life who are celebrating as well. So those are some things that come to mind. Yeah.
All great things to consider in terms of our daily actions. And then also I would say, look at who you're following and consuming content from. We're all people, we are professionals, we all have our day-to-day things, we all are influencers in our own way that, are promoting unique I would say just, content in our lives. And so look at who you're following. Are those people Black? Are they Latino? Are they LGBTQI plus? I think sometimes we can get, caught up in just a certain narrative. And so even for me, right, just being mindful of who I'm following and making sure I'm consuming diverse perspectives and not just following a one note type of, content creator or thinker person or whatever the case is.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Cause it's like even the things we watch on Netflix matters. Like, you know what I mean? Go through them lists, you know, of movies to watch during the month, right? Because some shows get to continue for long seasons and some don't, you know what I mean? And that's definitely related to consumers, right? Right. What are you watching on YouTube, right? All those different things matter. So thank you for mentioning that. Follow me, follow your boy. No.
Yeah, and follow Sembra for all of our
yeah.
all of our guests for these episodes. Anything else you want to share or leave us with?
Something that's been on my mind like lately for real has been like, particularly because I've had a lot of people in my life unfortunately pass early because they are people who are like very much community centered or like people in their lives. That they're the ones who do a lot in their lives for others, right? So it's just a note to say like, you know, take care of yourself, hydrate, right? For some reason, evil people live extra long. I don't know why, and their blood pressure is all the way together, right? Versus people who have good intentions, whether we question ourselves or whether we have that self-doubt. We're like, oh, can we do this? Or we overthink situations with others, right? Just really pause, take some deep breaths, right? Know that you're valuable, that you're supposed to be here, right? Important to care for self, right? We need more people who have these types of values to live long, and to continue to prosper and do well and take care. So yeah, that's all.
Absolutely. Before you serve others, you have to serve yourself. Like that's something that's been a recurring theme this year that, you know, different spaces I've been in, and the work that we do is very selfless and it's tough. The communities that we're around as well are going through hard times. And yeah, I resonate with that a lot. Just with things that are happening personally on my end over here. So with that, like that's your sign. Just check in on your friends, check in on your family, check in on yourself. And you know, let's all support one another. But I think your spaces and our spaces are doing that in a sense of helping us check in with one another and, you know, celebrate, be kind, care for one another. And so that's really all we're here to do, right? Is just make the world, you know, a better place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. It's 11:45. We are right on time. Thank you so much, Dio. I really appreciate not only your leadership, but you know, your friendship and being able to hop on this today and support Sembra in its infancy. I hope to be as successful as Chosen one day. And I'm so
still out, still climbing, but thank you so much. And yes, Sembra will, it already is.
Yeah, I love our collab points. And yeah, more to come, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. I know we had people dropping off. I know people have meetings back to back, but like I said, we'll get the recording up and thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.